By 1977, the city of Philadelphia had received countless complaints from local residents and decided it was time to take serious action against MOVE. On May 20th of that same year, city health inspectors and the police pulled up to the MOVE residence in Powelton in an attempt to perform an inspection on the property. That's not what ended up happening though, because they were met by MOVE members who were wearing green berets and brandishing rifles. The police decided today wasn't the day to go down that road, so they de-escalated the situation by backing down and not attempting to force their way into the home. But the police heavily increased surveillance of the MOVE property after this incident. Fast forward about a year later, on March 1st, 1978, the Philadelphia Court of Common Pleas issued an order for the police to blockade the MOVE residence. The city wanted MOVE out of that house, and they attempted to accomplish this through a siege. The blockade meant members of MOVE were not able to leave the block. They did not have access to city water, and no one was allowed to supply them with anything. No food, medical supplies, nothing. This blockade also affected the neighbors since they could no longer leave the block without a police escort. Obviously, this was incredibly irritating and it left the residents deeply divided. Some of them blamed the police, others blamed MOVE. Some felt the blockade violated MOVE's civil rights, while others believed political agitators such as MOVE were using civil rights as a shield to engage in disruptive and annoying behavior. What most of the residents could agree on was that this blockade would almost certainly solve absolutely nothing. But once again, we're seeing the innocent bystanders of Philadelphia being punished in this war between MOVE and the police. 2 months later, on May 3rd, MOVE and the city of Philadelphia reached an agreement. MOVE would give up all their firearms, they would allow the city health inspectors to enter the home, and they would vacate the property by August 1st of that year. The city agreed that if MOVE did these things, then they would not arrest any members who did not have any outstanding warrants. What a deal. Shockingly, MOVE did not vacate the property by August 1st, 1978. The reason, according to MOVE, was that they didn't have any money to relocate. MOVE was literally unable to move. So on August 8th, the police began towing vehicles off the street, and they brought in a bulldozer and a cherry picker to tear down the wooden barricades that MOVE had placed in front of the house and over the windows. They then used high-pressure water hoses to pump thousands of gallons of water into the home to literally flush them out. Shortly after this, MOVE and the police began to exchange gunfire with one another for about 90 minutes. Keep in mind, there were children inside of this home. Thankfully, none of them were injured, but one police officer named James Ramp was unalived, and 2 other officers and 3 firefighters were injured in the shootout. The police then began throwing tear gas into the home, and this was enough to get MOVE to surrender. It's reported that the police fired over 1,000 rounds of ammunition, and there were hundreds of police officers on the scene. Delbert Africa was one of the MOVE members inside the home during the shootout. If you'll remember, Delbert was the guy who was leading many of the animal abuse protests in the early 1970s. When Delbert came out of the house with his hands up, the police immediately began beating the dog shit out of him. This entire event was captured on video by the Philadelphia Inquirer, but it's pretty graphic, so I'm not going to show that part here. But if you want to see yourself, it's pretty easy to find online. But when Delbert came out the house, he was cracked across the head with the helmet, he fell to the ground, and the police began dragging, stomping, kicking, and punching him repeatedly. The reason, according to the police, was because the officers were furious that one of their own had been unalived.
As far as Delbert Africa and the frustrations of those police officers and having their leader come out there as defiant as he did after having slaughtered our own people, and then expect a society to turn around where no emotion, you strip it, they're sterile, and you're not supposed to touch the guy. It's a wonder the man ever walked. How in God's name can anybody just say, well, treat them properly, forget it, emotions are free, don't do anything, pick up your dead, pick up all your wounded, walk away, everything's okay, he did his thing, but it's okay, you don't do your thing. Well, you can put a badge on all day long, but you still have a little blood pumping in you. You still have the emotion and the frustration of seeing your own people slaughtered. And then this thing comes out here like a milk-fed quarterback, and he wants to be a star? A star? I'd have buried him. I'd have buried him. He killed somebody who he couldn't carry his jockstrap. And that garbage, that trash, because he had a cause that he couldn't even spell, wants to just blow everybody away and come out and say, I got rights. Got rights? He's got to be mad. I know he's mad anyway.
Hirsch would essentially argue that it wasn't realistic to expect the police to keep their composure after having been shot at and attacked. But ask yourself, do the police expect citizens to keep their composure and comply when they're being beaten and shot at by the police? And we're just ordinary citizens. The police have received training on how to remain composed during intense situations. It's literally their job. So the argument that it's okay to beat the hell out of suspects simply because they got too emotional doesn't fly in my book. The police are meant to be an extension of the law. Their job is about bringing people to justice, not getting revenge. Also, peep Sergeant Hirsch's language when speaking about Delbert Africa. He literally calls that man a thing and a milk-fed quarterback in an attempt to paint Delbert as some sort of non-human savage beast that needed to be put down. Hirsch is clearly letting his emotions get in the way. And he isn't a normal person like you and I. He has access to an entire police department. He can use that department like his own personal criminal organization to hurt people he doesn't like. I don't need to break down how dangerous and corrupt that can be. This is why officers of the law are supposed to be held to a higher standard. It's because of all that power they have and the damage that can occur if they misuse that power. But let me know if you agree or disagree in the comments. 11 members of MOVE would be charged with the murder of Officer James Ramp, and 9 of them would be convicted, including Delbert Africa. They will go on to be referred to as the MOVE 9. They received various sentences ranging from 30 to 100 years in state prison. The non-jury trial took 19 weeks, and at the time, it was the longest trial in Philadelphia history. Delbert Africa would repeatedly claim that MOVE never fired a single bullet during the entire August 8th situation. When asked who unalived Officer Ramp then, he contends that he died due to friendly fire from the police themselves. He believes that MOVE was framed by the police to cover up the fact the police had accidentally unalived one of their own. Delbert also accused the police of purposefully shooting at the women and children in the home. Hirsch would deny these claims.
They definitely fired first and fired a lot of sustained fire. It wasn't, the police didn't fire back until given the orders to fire back.
I know the cops fired the shots throughout the whole thing. Ain't no doubt about it. Ain't no doubt about it. We didn't fire.
Who killed Officer Ramp?
One of them cops, and that's why they want to cover it up.
Delbert Africa yesterday told me that you had seen some women and children through the basement window and then emptied your carbine rifle through that window.
No, absolutely not. Delbert knows better than that. What I seen was Chucky Africa. Seen him clearly coming right up to the window. And I seen him with that Mini Ruger 223, and I said that.
What we're seeing is two groups who behaved in a shameful and irresponsible manner, but they both felt the other side was so evil that it made their behavior necessary. So they're both shifting the blame to the other side. With that being said, I can't hold MOVE to the same standard as the police. The police are the professionals. But I'll dive more into this idea later on in the video because neither side learned a damn thing from this incident. Prior to the August 8th situation, several members of MOVE had fled Philadelphia to escape the heat. One of these members was MOVE founder John Africa. These members decided to hide out in the city of Rochester, New York, and I'm going to use this moment to bring up a glaring issue I have with MOVE. This organization was all about freedom from the government and reverting to a more primitive way of life. So why on earth are they choosing to live in the big city? If you wanted to avoid government attention and you wanted to get away from society, why the fuck would you want to live in these big ass cities? Why not go to the countryside? You would have more land to do what you want to do. You wouldn't have to worry about nosy neighbors snitching on you. Keep in mind, Move did not believe in technology, so all they had to do was go set up a tent in the middle of the forest, and 90% of the problems they were having would just disappear. Go off the grid. Shit, look at the Amish. You don't see the Amish trying to set up shop in the middle of Pittsburgh or Cleveland and then complaining that these cities are doing city things. I can only come up with two conclusions. Either Move genuinely enjoyed the beef, the conflict, and so being in the city meant they could consistently pick fights with the government, or they were quietly relying on services that society provided, such as running water, access to grocery stores, financial opportunities, etc., which would make them hypocrites. I don't know, man. Y'all let me know in the comments why you think Move refused to go live in a rural area, because I can't make sense of it. John Africa and the other Move members who were hiding out in Rochester were eventually captured in 1981. They were charged with manufacturing bombs and conspiring to use them for a terrorist campaign against the government. Witnesses had stated John Africa had devised a plan to give members of Move fake bombs and then instructed them to plant them around the city of Philadelphia with threatening messages attached. John Africa would be acquitted of these charges on July 23, 1981. Even though John Africa and a few other members were able to escape the penitentiary, not every member was so lucky. But even the ones incarcerated were still raising hell behind bars. This same year, in 1981, several Move women were incarcerated at Muncie State Prison. Now, in the state of Pennsylvania, in order for an inmate to be allowed in the general population, they have to submit to a blood test so the prison can determine if the inmate has any infectious diseases. But Move's religion does not allow force members to have their blood drawn, and so the Move women refused. The prison couldn't let them out into the general population without this blood test, so they were put in the restrictive housing unit, aka the hole. But the Move women didn't want to be in the hole, so they decided to go on a hunger strike in order to force the prison to let them out in the general population. According to Move, the prison guards then beat these women and restrained them in order to draw their blood, get them onto the gym pop yard, and end the hunger strike. This incident shows how adamantly stubborn and convicted Move was in its beliefs. Even when incarcerated, they absolutely refused to play along. They were determined to buck the system, even at the cost of their own safety. On the one hand, I can respect that. But on the other hand, it just starts to look foolish. Stubborn for the sake of being stubborn, even when defeat is guaranteed. With so many members locked up, Move would turn its attention to fighting for the liberation of all the members who were behind bars. This would be a turning point for the organization that would expose even more contradictions and lead to devastating circumstances for Move and the innocent people who lived around them. After John Africa was acquitted on those bomb charges, he and the remaining members of Move relocated to 6221 Osage Avenue in West Philadelphia. This was a home owned by Louise James, who was one of John's sisters. During this period, according to Move's own website, the organization was focused on three things: fighting to free the Move 9, fighting to convince the general public of their beliefs, and fighting to quell dissent within Move itself. Unsurprisingly, some members of Move were starting to become disillusioned with the organization. One of those members was Valerie Brown. By 1981, Valerie had been an active member of Move for about 9 years, but their ideology and practices were starting to wear her down. She said she began to view the group as more of a cult as time went on. She claims that she would be berated if she did anything that wasn't perfectly in line with the group's beliefs. She once received an hours-long lecture, all because she brushed her daughter's hair. Even something as simple as basic hygiene and grooming was viewed as a betrayal of principles for many MOVE members. Valerie was also fed up with the total lack of education for her 2 kids. If you'll remember, MOVE made it a point not to teach any of the children how to read or write. They referred to it as synthetic education and felt it was yet another evil invention of society. So in 1981, Valerie Brown finally left the group. My only question is why the hell it took her 9 years to realize this was no place to raise a child. She wasn't the only member to speak out against MOVE either, because another member named Jean Africa would later write, quote, "MOVE is not about honesty. They are not the victims they portray themselves to be. MOVE is about breaking down the system at anyone's cost." End quote.
Man's lifestyle is wrong, and we're about getting rid of it.
This is what I've been pointing to this whole time. MOVE felt their cause was so righteous and necessary that it didn't matter whose lives they harmed in the process. At that point, you're no longer a victim. You are a belligerent, a willing participant in war, and so you must share the blame for the harm you helped cause. But MOVE wasn't just fighting its own internal battles at this time. They were simultaneously fighting against the government. In 1981, MOVE had filed a federal lawsuit against the city of Philadelphia over the events that had taken place during the August 8th police raid. MOVE claimed that the police's actions during the raid were unlawful and a violation of their civil rights. They claimed the police had unlawfully destroyed their personal property, as well as $25,000 in cash they claimed was in the home when the police raided it. Keep in mind though, the August 8th raid took place because MOVE had agreed to leave the home in Powelton, but then refused to leave due to not having the money to relocate. Now they're saying the police destroyed $25,000 that they had stored in the home. The math ain't mathin'. If you have $25,000 in 1978, you can afford to move somewhere else. So either they lied when they said they didn't have the money to move, or they lied when they claimed the police destroyed $25,000. Either way, they lying. In the lawsuit, MOVE also accuses the police of firing their weapons at the women and children in the home, excessive force, etc. The lawsuits were, of course, dismissed on the grounds of sovereign immunity. Sovereign immunity states that the government cannot be sued unless it consents to be sued. If the government feels it did no wrong, that's what it is. This kind of blew my mind and sounded a bit like corruption when I learned about this, but then I thought about it. If the government could be sued by anybody who felt like the government did something wrong, our judicial system would be drowned in endless lawsuits, effectively crippling the whole system. So it makes sense, but at the same time, do you think the government is ever going to admit to being wrong, even if they are? Not likely. But this raises another question. MOVE already felt the government was corrupt. So why would they expect to use a corrupt system to expose its own corruption? Not only that, MOVE felt that American laws were illegitimate and had no jurisdiction over them. They felt they didn't have to obey them, that they didn't apply to them. So why are they now wanting to be protected by those same laws? They wanted to destroy the system, but also felt the system should protect them while they were waging their war to destroy it. I mean, it's nonsensical all the way around the board. MOVE knows the government has authority. They know laws exist and that they'll be held accountable for breaking them. They know they could never destroy America in any way. So why do all this shit that they're doing? I'll let you answer that question for yourself. Since MOVE couldn't get their way in the court of law, they decided to take their activity back to the streets of Philadelphia. The same shit that was happening back in Powelton, MOVE started doing that on Osage Avenue as well. They brought the same stench, the same rats and rodents, the same packs of stray dogs, the same super insects, all that. And just like the Powelton residents, the Osage residents weren't feeling this shit either. And the Osage neighborhood was primarily a working class black neighborhood, so this isn't a race thing. MOVE was just equally annoying to everyone. But on Osage Avenue, MOVE decided to take things a step further. They weren't satisfied with the level of disruption and chaos they were causing their neighbors because they put together a fucking PA system on the roof of their house. So now, Move could broadcast their political, profanity-fueled messages over a loudspeaker for everyone to hear. Let me break down the most notorious example of this loudspeaker campaign. Starting on Christmas Eve, 1983, Move blasted their insane rants for 36 hours straight over these loudspeakers. In these rants, Move cussed out and threatened the police and city officials. Neither of those groups lived on Osage Avenue, so these messages were only bothering the innocent neighbors who lived around them. Residents later stated that these messages frightened their children and prevented them from going to sleep on Christmas Eve, as well as exposed them to very foul, very adult language. When a Move member was later asked about this incident by a journalist, he had this to say.
Okay, first of all, what took place on December 24th, 1984 was 1983 was the confrontation that Move had initiated against the city of Philadelphia concerning the use of the bullhorn and the use of profanity. Well, it's unfortunate that our confronting the system in the way that we did was to impose on their rights, but certainly it wasn't. In fact, it was to ensure them.
As you can see, Move did not view these actions as harassment. They felt they were a necessary confrontation with the government. But the government wasn't on Osage Avenue. The government didn't have to listen to that unhinged bullshit for 36 hours straight. The fact that Move would do all the mental gymnastics possible to convince themselves that this loudspeaker campaign was really in the best interest of their neighbors and that they were just fighting for their freedom is truly bizarre. The Black Panther Party co-founder Bobby Seale, who was now a professor in Philadelphia during all of this, would later have some words for Move. Quote, Move violated the cardinal rule. You don't alienate the people, particularly the people around you in the community. End quote. At this point, Move had totally lost the plot, if they ever had it to begin with. They began to feel entitled to disrupting the lives of everyone around them. The same thing they accused the government of doing. Pot, meet kettle. In 1984, Philadelphia elected its first black mayor, Woodrow Wilson Good Sr. But being the first black anything comes with a good deal of fear and caution. You understand you have a lot of weight on your shoulders. Any mistake you make will reflect on the black community as a whole. Because of this, Mayor Good was extremely hesitant to take action against Move, despite the fact his office was receiving complaints damn near every day. He didn't want a repeat of the August 8th police raid on his resume. Since city officials weren't doing anything about Move, the Osage residents decided they needed to speak to a manager. On April 30th, 1985, residents of the 6200 block of Osage Avenue voiced their complaints directly to Pennsylvania Governor Richard Thornburgh at a news conference. This is what they had to say. Quote, we are here to let the governor know about the disquietude and general state of terror we are forced to live under by the Move organization. We want the governor to know that regardless of whatever may have happened in the past, today Move is a clear and present danger to the health and safety of our entire block. We also want the governor to know that we have been to our elected representatives in city and state government, but to date, nothing of any consequence has been done. We are now asking Governor Thornburgh to step in and deal with this situation. End quote. Well, damn. Now that the governor had been directly dragged into the situation, Mayor Good felt pressure to finally put together a quick plan to end all the drama. He had District Attorney Ed Rendell activate outstanding warrants for 4 members of Move, and the police obtained a court order to go in and remove all the children living in the home since they were illegally being kept out of school. This exposes the incompetence and apathy of the city officials, because why in the hell weren't those kids already removed from the home? They knew it was illegal for the Move adults to keep their kids out of school at such a young age, and they did nothing. They were absolutely fine with having those children live in those conditions, living with no electricity, living with rats and roaches, not learning to read or write. It's a damn shame. But finally, at long last, the plan to bring an end to MOVE was in motion. On the night of May 12, 1985, which happened to be Mother's Day, 500 Philadelphia police officers began evacuating homes on Osage Avenue and began getting in position to surround the MOVE residents. The police were positioned in the front, in the back, and they even had snipers on nearby rooftops. MOVE had heavily fortified the front of the home, and even more alarmingly, they built a fortified bunker made of wood on the roof. Getting the MOVE members out of the home would not be as simple as kicking in the front door.
Because you don't know what the extent of this is going to be, you know?
What do you think?
I think, believe it or not, I think you'll have to kill all of them.
Couple that with the fact MOVE is guaranteed to be as belligerent and stubborn as possible, and you can see this situation was cursed from the jump. But trust and believe, the police were just as determined to make this situation as ugly as possible. Early the next morning around 5 a.m., Police Commissioner Greg Sandborg got on his bullhorn and addressed MOVE. Quote, "Attention MOVE. This is America. You have to abide by the laws of the United States. We do not wish to harm anyone. All occupants have 15 minutes to peacefully evacuate the premises and surrender. This is your only notice. The 15 minutes starts now." End quote. An unidentified member of MOVE got on their own loudspeaker and responded, quote, "Come on in and get us. You're gonna be lying in the street, bleeding in the street." End quote. Once again, neither side is willing to de-escalate this war. Now, it's important to inform you that Commissioner Greg Sandborg was explicitly instructed by Mayor Good to get the children out of the home before he ordered the police to begin the assault on the home. That is not what Greg Sandborg decided to do, though. True to his word, once the 15 minutes were up, Greg Sandborg did not give any more warnings or additional opportunities for any MOVE members to surrender. Instead, the police were instructed to begin pumping high-pressure water into the bunker on the roof. 5 minutes after that, gunfire erupted. It's never been definitively proven whether it was the police or MOVE who fired the first shot. Before an hour and a half, the police unloaded high-power weaponry into the home. Law enforcement officers on the scene were equipped with M16s, Uzis, M60 machine guns, 50 cal rifles, and they even had an anti-tank gun. The reason for these military-style firearms was because the police believed MOVE had obtained high-powered semi-automatic rifles to combat the police. Was this true? Well, you'll find out in a second. The police had serious firepower, but they were firing recklessly. They were so uncoordinated with their assault plan that 2 SWAT teams in a nearby home became pinned down by the police gunfire. SWAT believed this gunfire to be coming from members of MOVE, so they detonated C4 charges in an attempt to escape the area. The explosion from the C4 was so powerful that it blew off the front of the MOVE house and launched an AC unit across the alley. Keep this in mind because it will play a part shortly. After the initial 90 minutes of the assault, the police called a ceasefire. In those 90 minutes that they were shooting, they had unloaded more than 10,000 rounds of ammunition, while knowing there were children inside of the home. But wait, it gets much worse. After the shootout, there was 5 hours of peace and quiet. What were the police doing during these 5 hours? Were they attempting to negotiate with MOVE? Were they coming up with a plan to extract the children? No. Greg Sandborg used those 5 hours to construct a bomb. And not just any bomb. Greg Sandborg instructed that shrapnel be placed within the bomb in order to, quote, "get them motherfuckers," end quote. The main explosive material in the bomb was C4. How did the Philly police get their hands on C4? That is not standard police equipment. Well, it was given to them a year earlier by the FBI. explicitly to aid them in dealing with MOVE. Why did Greg Sambor feel that a bomb was necessary? According to him, the plan was to blow a hole in the bunker so that they could throw tear gas inside. But this was totally unnecessary because, if you'll remember, the SWAT team had already blown a hole in the front of the house with their own C4. So there's already a hole in the house, and Greg Sambor is explicitly instructing that shrapnel be placed in the bomb. It seems to me that Police Commissioner Greg Sambor wanted to cause as much destruction as possible as a way to teach MOVE a lesson. Is this the way you think the police should operate? Let me know in the comments. At 5:27 p.m., a Pennsylvania State Police helicopter dropped the bomb on the wooden bunker on the roof of the MOVE residence. The police gave no warning to MOVE as to what was about to happen. They did not give any last chance to surrender. And they didn't even try to get the kids out of the house first. The bomb wasn't able to destroy the bunker, but it did cause a fire to break out because a piece of hot shrapnel pierced a gas can that was sitting on the roof near the bunker. The fire was never a part of the plan, and yet Greg Sambor chose to let the fire continue burning anyways, despite the fact firefighters had been on the scene the whole time. Within 30 minutes, the fire had begun to spread to nearby homes and was already out of control. Temperatures inside the MOVE home got as hot as 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit. According to some witnesses, members of MOVE attempted to escape the burning house multiple times, but the police would open fire on them, which would force them back into the blaze. Now, this has never been officially proven, but I can't imagine any person not attempting to escape a burning building. Thankfully, a woman and a child were able to escape the fire. They were immediately taken into custody, but more on that later. Finally, after an hour, Greg Sambor gave the order to put the fire out, but by this point, it had spread to damn near the whole block. When it was all said and done, 61 homes were completely destroyed. Inside the MOVE home, 6 adults and 5 children had perished in the fire. When the police investigated the home, they were only able to find 2 .38 caliber revolvers, 2 12-gauge pump shotguns, and 1 .22 caliber rifle. This is just basic civilian firearms, nothing that warranted the military-grade weaponry the police used during the assault. Needless to say, the community was not happy about the way the police handled this situation. About 250 people were suddenly homeless due to the recklessness of the police, and 5 children had lost their lives. Regardless of how residents felt about MOVE, no one wanted to see those babies get hurt. Did Commissioner Greg Sambor apologize for his actions? Of course not. Instead, he justified his decision by stating he viewed the children as active combatants. So it wasn't an accident that those children were harmed. That was the intended goal, according to Sambor himself. This incident was only the second time an American city had a bomb dropped on it via an air raid. The only other time this had happened was when Black Wall Street was bombed in Tulsa, Oklahoma in 1921. The fact that this had been ordered by Philadelphia's first black mayor left the black community straight up flabbergasted. In order to save face, Mayor Good appointed the Philadelphia Special Investigation Committee to conduct an investigation on the incident. This committee consisted of various prominent and qualified people, including a former FBI agent and a former Supreme Court justice. The Philadelphia Police Union attempted to block this investigation. They filed a complaint against the city of Philadelphia where they argued the PSIC did not have jurisdiction to conduct an investigation due to the Philadelphia Home Rule Charter. In other words, the Philadelphia police wanted to investigate themselves. Gee, I wonder why. The courts ruled against the police union and allowed the investigation to proceed, but the courts also ruled that police officers could not be compelled to testify in public and that they could plead the fifth when questioned privately. This is exactly what the Philadelphia Police Bomb Unit would end up doing. The PSIC conducted more than 900 interviews and gathered records from 36 governmental agencies. On March 6, 1968, the PSIC released their report, which found that city officials had repeatedly behaved in a negligent manner when dealing with MOVE. The commission believed that the local government adopted a non-confrontational, hands-off approach, and this allowed the situation to fester years longer than it should have, and it also gave MOVE time to build the bunker on their roof. The commission questioned why the police didn't even attempt to negotiate with MOVE, and they believed the death of the 5 children qualified as unjustified homicides. Because of this, they believed the police needed to be investigated by a grand jury to determine if criminal charges should be filed. The PSIC also placed blame on the FBI for supplying the police with the C4. Quote, the FBI encouraged, promoted, and protected the Philadelphia Police Department's offensive use of excessive force, and for this, the FBI shares responsibility and culpability for the outcome of May 13, 1985. End quote. Like the PSIC suggested, a grand jury did end up investigating the Philadelphia police and city officials, but they came to the conclusion that criminal charges were not appropriate in this case. Quote, our investigation has revealed considerable incompetence and ineptitude. It has not, however, disclosed any actions which we believe warrant the filing of criminal charges. End quote. This was due to the fact the grand jury could not prove the police had any intent to harm MOVE members, which is truly bizarre considering the fact they let off over 10,000 shots and dropped a fucking bomb on them. But I guess they ain't intend for any of that to hurt them. Clearly there's some legal wording voodoo at play here that I'm not smart enough to understand. So no cops or city officials were ever charged in any way for this whole incident. In fact, the only person involved in the May 13th incident that was charged with any crimes was the woman, Ramona Africa, who was able to escape the burning home. She was convicted of riot and conspiracy charges. She ended up serving 7 years in prison, but was awarded $500,000 and an apology from the city of Philadelphia in 1996 for the pain and suffering she endured during the police raid in 1985. John Africa, the founder and leader of MOVE, was one of the 6 adults who perished in the fire. The police had succeeded at eliminating MOVE, but at what cost? Well, that's it. That's the end of the video. If you made it through the whole thing, thank you. Your support really means the world to me. But having learned all this, what conclusions can we come to? I think it's pretty clear. Many documentaries and articles written about MOVE tend to paint the organization as a victim, some poor, innocent freedom fighters who were unfairly targeted by the government. Shit, I don't agree. I find it very hard to sympathize with MOVE. At any moment, they could have chosen to live in the wilderness. They didn't use technology and they believed in a primitive hunter-gatherer way of life. So on paper, they didn't need to live in a massive city like Philadelphia, but they did, and they refused to leave. I think this is because they secretly relied on governmental services such as running water. They talked a big game about hating society and not needing it, but the fact they never chose to live away from society paints a different picture entirely. I also believe they had illusions of grandeur. This is made evident by their incessant desire to be loud and to be seen. Why else would you place speakers on your roof and force people to listen to your political messages? Why else would you go to the zoo and yell at visitors? Because they felt it was their right to disrupt life for all the people around them. They felt they were so important and so righteous that the world must stop and pay attention to what they had to say. They had serious main character syndrome. I also find it hard to feel sorry for MOVE due to the way they treated their children. Forcing your child to live in filth, denying them access to basic hygiene and medical care, forcing them to live a life of ignorance by never allowing them to learn to read and write. I mean, this is really no different than how slave masters treated black slaves back in the day. They also placed their children directly in harm's way. They encouraged the police to come and engage in violent conflict with them, even when they knew their children were in the home. I don't care how strongly you feel about your beliefs. That doesn't make it okay to force your children to suffer alongside you. The police and the city officials of Philadelphia are also the villains in this story. It's abundantly clear that various officials had a personal grudge against Move. They weren't operating out of a sense of duty or justice. They were being thuggish and vindictive. They're even more at fault because of the power they had, because of the authority given to them. They happily engaged in this little war with Move simply because they wanted to see Move get hurt. This is why it's important who you give power to. Some people don't know how to act when they have it. And just like Move, the police felt they were entitled to do the things they did, regardless of the innocent people that were significantly affected by their actions. I mean, they destroyed the homes of 61 families just to watch Move suffer. So in my eyes, the only victims in this whole saga were the innocent neighbors and the Move children who were unfortunate enough to be born to ignorant parents. But again, thank you all so much for tuning in today. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and consider subscribing to the channel. I'm a stone-faced ape, and I'll see y'all on the next video. Goodbye.